The police dog halted abruptly in the dark alley, refusing to proceed. His handler had never observed him behaving in this manner, but when backup arrived and revealed the truth, every officer was left shaken. Here's what transpired. Now, before we delve into today's story, please leave a comment below indicating where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoy remarkable police dog stories like this one, be sure to click that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. A gentle rain fell across Portland's northwest district, covering the cobblestone streets in a glistening sheen that reflected the faint light of century-old street lamps. Officer Michael Reeves tugged at the collar of his police raincoat, the department patch on his shoulder dampened by the continuous drizzle. Alongside him, Axel, his 4-year partner and German Shepherd K9 officer, moved quietly through the night, his black and tan coat appearing unaffected by the weather. "Quiet night, huh, buddy?" Michael said, observing as Axel's ears twitched, continuously registering the urban soundscape of faraway traffic, the infrequent late-night pedestrian, and the rustle of rain against brick walls. 8 years on the force had shown Michael that beauty frequently masked danger, particularly in the twisting alleys located between Portland's celebrated buildings. Axel proceeded with military precision, each step calculated yet smooth, his training apparent in every motion. The shepherd's amber eyes surveyed their surroundings with a keen intelligence that occasionally made Michael question just how much his partner truly understood. K9-5, this is dispatch. We've got reports of suspicious activity near Westmore and Caldwell. The caller mentioned unusual noises from the historic district, possibly from behind the old Harrington building. Michael activated his radio. Dispatch, K9-5 responding. We are 2 blocks away. We will investigate. Probably just the usual, Michael said to Axel, his voice low. Someone taking shelter from the rain. Maybe some teenagers thinking they found a good spot to hang out. Portland's historic district was full of recessed doorways and forgotten maintenance alleys that regularly attracted both the homeless and thrill-seeking youths. As they neared the Harrington building, a restored brick structure dating back to the 1890s, Michael directed his flashlight beam across the building's exterior. "Let's check the back," he proposed, turning towards the service alley located behind the row of historic buildings. At that moment, everything shifted. Axel's demeanor instantly changed. The easy, assured walk disappeared, superseded by tense readiness. His ears moved forward, his tail became straight, and every muscle in his strong body tightened noticeably under his damp fur. Michael had observed his partner signaling the presence of suspects, drugs, and weapons before, but this felt unusual. There was no sign of eagerness or the expectation that usually came with a positive discovery. "What is it, boy?" Michael asked, quickly checking their surroundings for danger. Axel made no barking or whining sounds. He remained focused on the alley entrance, a quiet growl vibrating in his chest. The shepherd's actions caused a wave of unease to ripple through Michael, unrelated to the rain wetting his collar. "Dispatch K9-5. Michael spoke into his radio, the tightness in his voice evident. "We're at the alley off Westmore, behind the Harrington building. Something feels amiss. Axel is displaying atypical behavior, requesting another unit to help investigate the situation." The usually reliable dog took a cautious step backward, leaning against Michael's leg, a behavior he'd never displayed previously. In 4 years of confronting armed suspects, entering burning buildings, and traversing disaster scenes, Michael had never witnessed his partner show fear. The alley extended before them, resembling a tight canyon, bordered by the imposing brick walls of buildings erected in a different century. Metal fire escapes angled downwards along the building's walls, their stairs reflecting the faint light with a wet sheen. Michael's flashlight appeared to be absorbed by the surrounding darkness, failing to cut through it. "Axel, move forward," Michael ordered, his voice steady despite his rising apprehension. For the initial time in their collaboration, Axel paused before responding to a direct instruction. The shepherd advanced 2 hesitant steps into the alley, then halted abruptly, exhibiting not the watchful readiness of a dog sensing drugs or bombs, nor the defensive posture of one confronting danger. This was a wholly different reaction. Axel remained still, his form tense, his gaze fixed on something in the distance that Michael couldn't perceive. Michael recalled their training sessions at the academy. The instructor's words resonated in his thoughts. Dogs possess an ability to perceive not only what exists but also what is amiss, demonstrating a perceptive capacity that surpasses human comprehension. Should your K9 partner display behavior you have not previously observed, be vigilant. It could potentially save your life. Dispatch requesting immediate backup at my location. K9 is exhibiting unprecedented behavior. Something's very wrong here. Copy that. K95. Units 12 and 17 are responding. ETA 4 minutes. The sound of boots impacting puddles signaled the arrival of backup. Raindrops clung to officers Layla Torres and Keith Mercer as they stepped forward, their tactical flashlights illuminating the gloom. What's the situation, Reeves? Torres inquired, her hand naturally positioned on her holstered weapon as she surveyed the alley. It's Axel, Michael responded, indicating his motionless partner. We were answering the suspicious activity report when he simply halted. He won't advance, he won't go back. I've never witnessed him behaving this way. Mercer's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. We hurried here because your dog became startled? Could have been anything, another animal, an unusual odor. It's impossible to say. That's the point, Michael stated directly. Axel doesn't become startled. Not by animals, not by suspects, not by anything we've seen before. This is unlike anything we've experienced. The officers systematically searched the accessible area of the alley, checking behind dumpsters and inspecting doorways. Nothing apparent, Torres said after a few minutes. There were no indications of forced entry, no people present, and no apparent dangers. Almost immediately after, Axel emitted a quiet whine, a sound so unusual that the three officers became alert. The shepherd subtly changed his position, still hesitant to move forward, but now actively opposing Michael's mild attempts to guide him back to the road. We ought to report this as a false alarm, Mercer proposed, but he seemed unsure. Perhaps we should have Axel examined. Michael remained steadfast. We need to investigate further. Axel is never incorrect, merely sometimes anticipating what we comprehend. Could we have thermal imaging deployed here? The thermal imaging unit was received by Officer Dawson, the department's technology specialist. Rain fell on the equipment's protective case as he meticulously assembled it near their patrol vehicles. You're fortunate I was already in the field, Dawson stated, while calibrating the device. What precisely are we searching for? Anything unusual? Michael asked, looking back at Axel, who stayed in the same motionless state. He listed possibilities: people concealing themselves, surprising heat signatures, structural irregularities, anything that could account for Axel's reaction. Dawson agreed, lifting the thermal viewer to survey the alley. That's strange, he said softly, modifying the device's settings. I'm detecting cold areas alternating with warm areas further into the alley, which isn't typical heat distribution. The three officers proceeded cautiously, with Dawson consistently observing the thermal imaging device. Approximately 60 feet into the alley, the scanner detected a notable temperature difference close to the ground. At that point, Dawson indicated a section of wall partly hidden by a dumpster. He noted that area displayed an unusual thermal pattern, showing cold spots that were unexpected. Michael then shone his flashlight to the spot Dawson had shown. Initially, it seemed like a standard section of the building's foundation. However, a more careful look showed slight variations. The bricks didn't align with the primary wall's design, and a narrow line indicated what seemed to be a maintenance entrance. That's not documented in any of the building plans I've reviewed, Mercer stated, shifting the dumpster to gain a clearer perspective. And look at this. The beam of his flashlight revealed new scuff marks on the ground, indicating the recent movement of the large dumpster. The maintenance door's lock displayed indications of being forced, and the settled dust had been disrupted. Michael noticed something additional. A small symbol was etched into the metal frame of the door. It wasn't graffiti, but rather a carefully and deliberately created design. A circle encompassed a stylized eye with emanating lines. We need to document this, he stated, taking photos with his department-issued phone, and to call in additional units. Dispatch, we've located a concealed entrance showing signs of recent activity. requesting Detective Division and additional backup for further investigation. Copy that, Unit 17. Detective Division notified. Be advised, Detective Wright is responding personally. Detective Marcus Wright arrived 20 minutes later, his weathered face serious beneath the brim of a rain-speckled fedora. Wright, at the age of 53, held legendary status within the department. His 25 years of experience had fostered a nearly uncanny knack for linking seemingly unrelated pieces of evidence. I've witnessed this previously, Wright stated softly, gesturing above the carving without making contact. 3 cases within the past year, all related to trafficking activities. These are highly developed operations. The warrants have been approved. We are proceeding with complete tactical authorization. Drawing on patterns from comparable operations, this entrance probably connects to a tunnel system situated under the historic district. Several of these buildings originate from the 1890s, and the subterranean network was substantial, largely lost to memory until criminals located it again. The maintenance door gave way to specialized entry tools, exposing a confined stairwell leading downwards into darkness. A stale odor of aged brick and motionless air rose from below. Wright instructed Reeves, "Your partner remains here with Torres." Given his reaction, he added, "I don't want to risk." He was interrupted by Axel's sudden movement. After almost an hour of complete immobility, the shepherd padded forward, pausing at the entrance to the stairwell. His earlier fear appeared transformed into determined purpose. "I believe he wants to lead," Michael said, surprised by the change. Wright considered this. "Your call, officer. You know your partner best." The initial descent was spearheaded by Axel, with Michael, Wright, and 4 other officers following. Their flashlights revealed a passage that had undergone recent renovations. The original brick walls were reinforced with contemporary metal supports, and electrical conduit was installed along the ceiling, while the floor had been cleared of any obstructions. "Someone has invested resources here," Wright noted. "These aren't just casual trespassers." The passage stretched approximately 100 yards before widening into a more spacious area displaying evidence of recent use. Sleeping bags were carefully arranged against one wall. A portable generator remained still in the corner. Particularly unsettling were the restraints secured to another wall, several sets designed to accommodate various wrist sizes. Axel proceeded deliberately around the chamber, his nose working continuously, then centered his attention on a metal footlocker located beneath a temporary table. Michael carefully opened the container, revealing dozens of passports, ID cards, and personal effects. He reported, leafing through the documents, that they bore different names and nationalities, but the individuals appeared to be of similar ages, mostly late teens and early 20s. Wright examined a detailed map pinned to the wall. "Look at this," he said. It displayed the entire tunnel network with connections to at least 6 buildings above. They were utilizing the old bootlegger routes from Prohibition, supplemented by some newer additions. Axel stiffened again, turning toward one of the 3 tunnel entrances extending from the main chamber. This was a posture of readiness, unlike his previous stillness, that Michael recognized. The dog had identified something particular. "He's detected something," Michael told the others, drawing his weapon. "Fresh scent, I'm guessing." "Which tunnel?" Wright asked, moving to stand beside him. "The eastern one," Michael replied, referencing his position. Wright checked the map. "That leads toward the river. Approximately 200 yards ahead lies a significant intersection, branching into several paths." The detective swiftly decided, "We have sufficient resources for a complete operational deployment. I'm requesting tactical teams to secure the alternative access points." He pointed out several locations on the map. "Are we proceeding?" Michael inquired, observing Axel's growing anticipation. Wright nodded gravely. "Your partner reports the presence of something or someone newly arrived in that tunnel. Whether they were victims or suspects, action was necessary, and they weren't delaying." Axel guided them further into the tunnel system. His previous uncertainty vanished. The tunnel then led to a more expansive, roughly circular chamber, with 5 passages extending outwards, resembling spokes on a wheel. "We are directly under the Westmoreland building," Wright stated, checking a compact GPS device. "The former bank, dating back to the 1920s and now converted into luxury apartments, provided a perfect cover. Residents were constantly coming and going at all hours, and no one questioned deliveries or service visits. Axel circled the chamber, his nose working overtime, before settling precisely between two of the outgoing tunnels. This alert posture indicated he had found what he was searching for, but could not pinpoint a specific location. Both passages Michael interpreted with the sense originating from both directions. Wright divided their small team. Mercer, you and Jefferson proceed along the right passage with Reeves and Axel. Henderson and I will take the left, maintain radio contact every 2 minutes, and initiate an immediate call if you discover anything. The passage gradually widened again, indicating signs of more extensive renovation. After approximately 100 yards, they arrived at another chamber, this one clearly designed for human occupation. This room differed from the initial one they found. It had been transformed into a regulated environment. Sections separated by lockable doors ran along one wall. A complex computer system was situated on another. Filing cabinets, a medical examination table, and recording devices finished the unsettling display. Jesus, Mercer said, observing the scene. What the heck is this place? Michael remained silent, observing as Axel carefully examined the room, indicating particular cabinets and locations. Following his partner's direction, Michael located several passports and identification papers, each bearing different names but featuring identical photographs. Even more unsettling were the medical records, containing detailed examinations, blood analysis, and psychological evaluations. They're manipulating people here, Michael stated at last, the weight of realization dawning on him. Assessing them, establishing new identities, and readying them for the future. Jefferson had opened one of the file cabinets. Sir, you need to see this. The drawer held numerous folders, each marked with a name, date, and destination code. Affixed to each file was a photograph of a young person, most appearing frightened, disoriented, or unnaturally sedated. This isn't just trafficking, Wright stated from the doorway, having rejoined them after exploring the other passage. This was a complex operation. He displayed a leather-bound journal. Financial records were discovered in the other chamber, revealing millions of dollars in transactions. Axel persisted in his careful examination of the chamber, finally settling in front of a metal door located at the far end of the room. Another guarded location. This door differed from those previously found. It was heavier, secured with a modern electronic lock instead of a traditional deadbolt. There are people behind that door, Michael said, moving to join his partner. Wright examined the lock system. High-end security. They're keeping something valuable in there. Or someone, Mercer added. The detective pulled a specialized electronic bypass tool from his tactical vest. Standard override should work. Everyone ready? We don't know what's on the other side. Weapons drawn, the officers positioned themselves as Wright bypassed the security system. With a pneumatic hiss, the substantial door swung open, presenting a striking difference from the functional areas seen before. The room beyond enjoyed climate control and featured costly leather sofas, antique rugs, and modern artwork. A bar was situated in one corner, filled with high-end spirits. A large window seemed to dominate one wall, although the area visible through it was presently unlit. Wright approached a control panel located close to the viewing window. It wasn't a club, it was an auction house. He activated a button, revealing the space beyond the glass. The connected room held a small stage, encircled by theater-style seating accommodating roughly 20 people. Multiple camera angles were covered by mounted cameras, and a podium was positioned at the stage's center. They're selling them, Michael stated, the words tasting like bile in his mouth, selling people to the highest bidder. Axel maintained his alert posture. Without a doubt, his focus had heightened, his gaze moving from the auction room to a second door located at the far end of the VIP lounge. This second door opened into a hallway containing 6 rooms extending from it. Each room was compact, furnished with just a bed and minimal amenities. 5 remained unoccupied, but the 6th, call medical now, Michael instructed as he stepped into the last room. 3 people rested on thin mattresses, 2 young women and a boy who appeared to be no older than 14. All were unconscious, but alive, with intravenous lines connected to their arms from medical bags suspended on portable stands. Sedated, Wright observed, verifying one woman's pulse. The pulse was strong and steady. They would remain under sedation until transport or, he looked back towards the auction room, his expression tightening until they were sold. Michael heard updates from the tactical teams through his radio as they secured additional access points within the underground network. Early information showed that at least 2 suspects were caught attempting to escape via a service exit 4 blocks away. The medical team had just reached the 3 victims to provide care when Axel abruptly stood up, fur bristling. This was not his warning for discovering evidence or even sensing a concealed individual. This served as the initial response, a consequence of an urgent danger. Prior to any action, Axel rapidly entered an unmapped tunnel, his speed requiring Michael to run to maintain visual contact. "Axel, wait," he called, drawing his weapon while running. Correct, potential suspects were in motion. The tunnel made a sharp turn, dividing into smaller passages that indicated recent activity. Michael listened for Mercer and Wright's footsteps as they followed, the sounds bouncing off the walls of the underground maze, but his attention stayed fixed on Axel's quickly fading figure in front. The shepherd moved through the twisting passages with steadfast confidence, making turns without pause. Ahead, Axel's barking resonated back to them, shifting from the controlled quiet of tracking to the sharp warning that indicated he had trapped his target. The passage ended with a rough wooden staircase ascending to a trapdoor. Axel stood at the foot of the stairs, intently observing the ceiling, barking with great force. The trapdoor above them moved slightly, revealing a narrow beam of faint light around its perimeter. Axel's barking grew louder. Rather than opening completely, the trapdoor shut abruptly, accompanied by the noise of a substantial object being pulled across its surface from above. The sound of hurried footsteps faded, accompanied by worried voices. "They're running." Michael began climbing the stairs, but Wright seized his arm. "Wait," he cautioned. "They could be setting a trap." Simultaneously, a quiet electronic beep came from above, followed by the noticeable hiss of gas being emitted. "Back," Wright commanded. "Everyone evacuate this area. Immediately." They retreated, just as a poisonous cloud started to leak through the spaces around the trapdoor. Axel guided them to a point 30 yards behind, where the air was still clean. "CS gas likely," Wright stated. "They're attempting to impede our progress." Jefferson's radio emitted static. The perimeter team was reporting activity at the Sentinel building. 2 suspects were observed leaving through the loading dock, proceeding east on foot. Michael, without awaiting verification, followed his partner, relying on Axel's judgment instead of conventional reasoning. The constricted passage appeared to twist unexpectedly, scarcely wide enough for the officers to pass through in sections, yet it kept a consistent diagonal path. "Clever dog," Wright observed as they reached a broader passage that rose sharply upward. "This has to be an original bootlegger route, not documented on any of the current maps." The passage ended at a corroded iron ladder, leading to a round hatch above. Michael ascended first, exerting force against the substantial cover. The mechanism resisted briefly before yielding with a groan of protest, exposing the interior of what appeared to be an abandoned mechanical room. "We're in the basement of Arlington Place," he reported back, recognizing the distinctive marble flooring visible through a partially open door that's directly across from the Sentinel building. They moved swiftly through the deserted building. Following Axel's silent guidance, the dog moved quickly from one puddle to the next. Michael observed water splashes mirroring the rhythm of running footsteps that had rippled the standing water. They arrived on Eastman Street just in time to witness 2 individuals sprint across the road, 2 blocks distant, and vanish into the entrance of a parking garage. "That's them," Michael exclaimed, starting to run with Axel leading the way. "Dispatch. Suspects are entering the Westover parking structure from the Eastman Street side." On the 3rd level, Axel abruptly decreased his speed, assuming a stalking stance. Just around the bend of the ramp, obscured somewhat by a support column, 2 men were working intensely at a laptop computer linked to a small portable device. Documents and hard drives were strewn about, and one was carefully inserting papers into a handheld shredder. "Police, don't move," Wright announced, appearing with his weapon raised. The younger of the two men quickly raised his hands, his face paling, while the older one moved to retrieve something from under his jacket. Axel responded immediately, swiftly moving across the space with intense focus. Before the man could finish his action, the shepherd secured the suspect's wrist with a firm bite, applying the necessary pressure to restrain him without causing significant harm. Weapon. Michael alerted, observing the weapon that had fallen from the suspect's hand. Within seconds, both men were restrained face down on the concrete with their hands zip-tied behind them. The younger one had already begun speaking, his words pouring out in a frantic attempt to distance himself from his companion. "I just handle the tech," he insisted. "I set up the auction software, maintain the network. I never touched any of the merchandise. I mean, the people. It was all Kirsch's operation." The processing center located under Portland's historic district transformed into the city's most extensive crime scene in recent history. Over 3 days, teams of forensic specialists meticulously cataloged evidence, documented the facility's layout, and collected DNA samples, which ultimately aided in identifying numerous victims who had previously passed through the operation. The level of sophistication was particularly unsettling, Wright noted during a short respite. "The majority of trafficking operations we disrupt are spontaneous and lack organization. This operation, however, functions similarly to a Fortune 500 company, exhibiting a corporate structure, quality control measures, and customer service protocols. The victims were regarded as commodities, possessing defined specifications and warranties. The 5 rescued victims were transferred to a specialized trauma center, where medical professionals experienced in trafficking cases are working to stabilize them physically while initiating the significantly longer process of psychological recovery." Wright told Michael that the youngest one was speaking. Just briefly, but it provided a timeline. She had been abducted 6 days ago in Seattle, survived the initial processing, but hadn't yet appeared in their auction catalog. The evidence, obtained from the suspect's laptop, proved to be even more valuable than expected. The documents held more than just customer details and financial data. They included communication records connecting the Portland operation to related sites in Vancouver, San Francisco, and extending eastward to Chicago. "International task forces are already targeting 3 locations based on our intelligence," Wright stated. "The plan involves coordinated raids and simultaneous action to avoid alerting any warning systems." Regarding the symbol discovered, the eye with the radiating lines, Wright confirmed that it represents their branding. "This pattern has emerged in previous instances, though we didn't grasp its meaning at the time. We now recognize it as a marker for their high-end product range, a designation they use, not one I would apply." His reaction clearly showed his displeasure. Each line signifies a distinct service they provide. The largest operations possess the highest number of lines. The one discovered had 7, the greatest number we've ever recorded. 1 week later, Michael and Axel resumed their standard patrol duties. The officer's path intentionally steered clear of the historic district, where the investigation persisted behind police barriers and under the observation of federal agents. Chief Bennett had recognized their requirement to resume a regular routine following the heightened stress of the previous week. The morning presented crisp, clear conditions. Autumn sunlight illuminated Portland's trees with a golden hue as they patrolled their beat through Cathedral Park. Axel proceeded with his characteristic disciplined precision, yet Michael observed a slight alteration in his partner, possibly a greater alertness or a stronger trust in his own intuition. They halted close to the St. John's Bridge, its Gothic arches rising above the Willamette River. Michael released Axel's leash, granting him a short respite in the grass while remaining vigilant about their environment. "You change things, he said softly to the shepherd. "It wasn't just concerning those 5 we located, but for hundreds more. They would never meet." Axel looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes that sometimes seem to understand far more than any animal should. The case had already resulted in coordinated raids in 3 cities, the rescue of 17 additional victims, and the identification of over 40 individuals involved in the trafficking network. Yesterday, Wright had informed me that the International Task Force was planning operations in 6 countries, utilizing evidence obtained from the Portland facility. It was all a consequence of my intervention in that alley. Michael reflected, observing as Axel's ears rotated to follow a passing jogger. It stemmed from my recognizing something amiss and choosing to speak out. Continuing their patrol, Michael reflected on the remarkable connection that has grown between humans and dogs throughout millennia of evolution. What insights from the past understood the value in these animals, not solely as hunters or guardians, but as companions capable of noticing details that humans might overlook. Have you ever felt that an animal perceived something beyond your own awareness? How do dogs such as Axel seem to detect threats that humans miss? We welcome your stories and opinions in the comments below. Do you think the connection between canine officers and their handlers extends past training, potentially reaching a level beyond our complete understanding? Please share your thoughts with our community. If this story of Axel's extraordinary discovery moved you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of remarkable canine heroes. Share this video with anyone who appreciates the incredible capabilities of working dogs and the special humans who partner with them. Check out our previous canine stories appearing on your screen now, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new video. A police dog prevented a pilot from boarding his aircraft, resulting in delays and passenger frustration. However, when security personnel investigated under the cockpit seat, the discovery caused everyone to evacuate. Here's the story. Before we proceed, please share your location in the comments. If you enjoy unusual police dog stories like this one, remember to subscribe for future content. A stark light from the fluorescent fixtures illuminated Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport as Officer Michael Reeves straightened his winter patrol jacket, his exhale seen in the January cold filtering through the automatic doors. Adjacent to him, Titan, his German Shepherd partner for 3 years, kept a precise heel position, his dark eyes observing the continuous flow of travelers with seasoned focus. The morning rush was underway, with passengers hurrying to their gates through the snowstorm that had blanketed Chicago overnight. Weather delays had created a tense atmosphere, with anxious travelers checking departure boards and flight crews rushing to minimize further disruptions. Just another day in paradise. Huh, boy? Reeves murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Titan's ear. The shepherd leaned into his touch briefly before resuming his vigilant posture. Reeves smiled, recalling that his colleagues had given Titan the nickname the Professor because of his almost unsettling ability to analyze situations. The dog never barked without cause, a trait that had made them one of the airport's most respected security teams. They continued their sweep through the international terminal, Titan moving with fluid grace between bags and passengers. Occasionally, he would look toward Reeves, their long history of working together clear in the understated exchanges between them. They had recently gone by the exclusive airline lounges when Titan's demeanor changed sharply, a transformation so abrupt that Reeves immediately perceived it. The shepherd's ears rose, his body tightening as his attention settled on a pilot walking assuredly through the crew's security lane. Captain James Harrington, as indicated on his visible ID badge, proceeded toward the flight deck preparation area. A flight bag was slung over one shoulder. He appeared unremarkable. His uniform was spotless, and his demeanor professional, as he nodded to the security personnel. However, Titan shifted from routine patrol to heightened alertness. A low growl emanated from his throat, quickly intensifying to insistent barking as he pulled Reeves toward the pilot. "Titan, hail!" Reeves gave the command, but for the first time in their partnership, Titan disregarded the order. The shepherd moved forward, placing himself directly in the pilot's path, his barking now attracting startled glances from everyone nearby. When Captain Harrington tried to step around him, Titan mirrored his movements, physically preventing him from going any further. "Control your dog, officer," Harrington snapped, his face reddening as passengers began to stare. "I have a transatlantic flight departing in 40 minutes. I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain," Reeves said, keeping his voice measured while maintaining his grip on Titan's leash. "But my partner doesn't react this way without a reason." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, your partner is mistaken. I've been flying for American Airlines for 15 years. I don't have time for this." Airport Security Supervisor Diane Coleman stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral, given the unfolding situation in the bustling terminal. "What's the situation?" Reeves? She inquired softly. Titan's alerting strongly to the captain here, Reeves responded, observing that Titan's focus remained consistently on Harrington. I've never seen him react this intensely to airline personnel. This is ridiculous, Harrington stated, glancing at his watch. Flight 862 to London was already delayed because of the snowstorm. I have 243 passengers waiting to board. Coleman glanced between the barking shepherd and the increasingly agitated pilot. Officer Reeves, you know we can't delay a flight because your dog is having an episode. Reeves felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. 3 years of working with Titan had taught him to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. Titan's assessments had proven accurate previously, including the discovery of a concealed weapon last year and the identification of a drug smuggler with surgical implants 2 months ago. I'm requesting a secondary screening for Captain Harrington, Reeves stated firmly. Protocol allows for random additional security checks of all personnel, including flight crew. This isn't random, Harrington snapped, his face growing redder. It's harassment. I'm calling the Airline Operations Center. While the pilot reached for his phone, Reeves observed a detail that reinforced his determination. A subtle tremor in Harrington's hand, a tension around his eyes that was absent just moments prior, suggested fear, or perhaps annoyance at the delay. Regardless, it wasn't the usual response from airline employees who sometimes experienced random screening. Sir, please accompany us for a brief additional check, Coleman stated, having made her decision. We are working to speed up the procedure to reduce any impact on your flight. This is unacceptable, Harrington exclaimed, but Reeves observed the pilot's gaze shifting towards the closest exit. Captain, this situation can be resolved discreetly, or we can formally report it, Coleman cautioned. The decision is yours. Harrington's shoulders dropped a little. Very well, but the airline will be informed of this. As they guided the pilot towards the private screening room, Reeves lowered himself to speak with Titan, who had become a bit calmer but remained watchful. He whispered, "Good boy. I trust you." Reeves glanced over his shoulder and saw the departure board. Flight 862 to London Heathrow was delayed. He hoped he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career or prevent the biggest disaster. The private screening room was austere, featuring white walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs under unforgiving fluorescent lights. Titan remained alert by the door as TSA officer Marcus Wong carefully examined Captain Harrington's credentials. Everything was in order, Wong said, checking the pilot's license and ID against the database. Captain James Harrington, with 15 years of experience at American Airlines, was current on all certifications and clearances. Harrington sat rigidly, his arms crossed. As I said, may I please proceed to my aircraft? He asked. The flight plan has already been filed, and we're burning fuel on the tarmac. Reeves watched quietly as Wong examined Harrington's flight bag. Standard items were found inside. Flight manuals, navigation charts, spare epaulets, reading glasses, an energy bar, and a travel-sized toiletry kit. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Sir, would you mind removing your jacket? Wong inquired, his tone professional. Harrington complied with apparent annoyance, setting his uniform jacket on the table. This exceeded protocol even for a routine screening. Wong meticulously examined the jacket, inspecting each pocket and seam while Reeves observed Titan. The dog's focus remained constant. His gaze remained fixed on the pilot, tracking his every movement. After using her radio, Coleman checked with operations, then returned to the room, stating they're positioning a backup pilot just in case, but they need a decision within 15 minutes. Tension filled the small room. Reeves felt doubt begin to surface, even with his trust in Titan. The evidence, or the absence of it, was causing him to reevaluate his decision. Look, Harrington said, his tone becoming more gentle. I understand you're doing your job. Perhaps your dog detected the scent of my cat on my garments. I administered her medication this morning prior to departing. The reasoning seemed credible. Dogs sometimes react to animal odors, particularly medications containing chemical components resembling illicit substances. Wong finished his examination, discovering no irregularities. He confirmed that everything appeared correct. Coleman released a sigh of relief, I believe we can exonerate Captain Harrington. We will document the event, and Titan abruptly barked loudly, standing up. Reeves knew from their time working together that this wasn't simple determination, it was a deliberate increase in intensity. The dog was signaling that they were overlooking something. Sir, Reeves said cautiously, could you please empty your trouser pockets as well? Harrington's face registered a momentary shift. It was so subtle that most wouldn't have noticed it. All right. He removed a wallet, keys, a phone, and some spare coins, setting them on the table. No Wong scrutinized each item, paying close attention to the phone. Typical iPhone. Is everything all right? Harrington asked, gathering his things. As his sleeve moved, Reeves observed a slight dampness on the pilot's wrist, even though the room was cool. The man's breathing had also become a little faster. Actually, Reeves said, I'd like to request a full body scan and an ion detector swab. Harrington paused. That's not a typical process for flight crew. It is when there's reasonable suspicion, Coleman responded, her earlier skepticism diminishing as she also observed the pilot's changing behavior. I need to make a call to my union representative, Harrington stated. Coleman nodded to Wong, who approached. Your phone will need to remain here during the additional screening, Captain. The atmosphere in the room had changed. What began as an apparent false alarm now felt like the beginning of something far more serious. While arrangements were being made to transfer Harrington to the advanced screening zone, Titan's actions changed once more. The dog moved towards the uniform jacket, which remained on the table, his attention becoming sharply focused. He's attempting to communicate something specific, Reeves observed, permitting Titan to approach the jacket. The dog carefully sniffed the garment, then stopped at the collar, gently but persistently pawing at the left lapel. Harrington expressed his discomfort. This is absurd. This was a standard uniform provided by the airline. Reeves recalled an incident from 6 months prior. A smuggler had concealed contraband within the clothing seams, bypassing typical security checks. Titan had discovered it at that time as well. I'd like to examine this more closely, Reeves stated, picking up the jacket. He gently ran his fingers along the collar and lapel, the areas Titan had pointed out. Despite the lack of any clear indication, he observed that the stitching on the left side seemed subtly different, almost too tight to readily see. We require the portable imaging equipment, he stated to Coleman, the type utilized for potential electronic compartments. You're dismantling my uniform because of a dog's reaction? Harrington exclaimed, his voice escalating. This is custom tailored, valued at more than $1,000. Coleman paused briefly, then initiated the necessary communication. Should no evidence be located, the department will cover any damages, she guaranteed the pilot. While waiting for the equipment, Reeves thought about Titan's past. The Shepherd had previously identified a memory card concealed within a pen with a hollowed-out interior, which contained vital evidence in a human trafficking case. On another occasion, he'd flagged traces of explosives that were so slight that even the laboratory had initially overlooked them. I've worked with K-9 units for 12 years, Reeves told Coleman. Titan operates with exceptional accuracy. His detection rate is almost flawless. The imaging technician brought in a portable X-ray device, meticulously scanning the jacket as everyone observed the connected monitor. Initially, the scan revealed nothing out of the ordinary. However, when the scanner moved across the left lapel, an anomaly appeared. A slim, flat object was visible, concealed within the fabric and difficult to see without assistance. What is that? Coleman inquired, examining the screen. The technician made adjustments, improving the image. It appeared to be a microchip or a small electronic component. Everyone's attention shifted to Harrington, whose face had lost all color. Captain, Coleman stated, her voice now firm, can you please explain what's concealed within your uniform? Harrington's facade crumbled. I want a lawyer. Reeves crouched beside Titan, who had at last calmed down, his objective completed. Good boy, he murmured. You were correct all along. Michael Reeves's relationship with dogs hadn't always been as strong as it was with Titan. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd suffered a bite from a neighbor's Rottweiler when he was 8 years old, an experience that made him cautious around K-9s for several years. Although he'd largely overcome his concerns when he joined the Chicago Police Department at 23, he still never envisioned becoming a K-9 handler. A shift occurred during his 4th year as a police officer, after he observed K-9 officer Patrice Williams and her Belgian Malinois, Rex, successfully locate a kidnapping suspect through an industrial park, leading to the rescue of a 6-year-old child. The accuracy, the teamwork, and the unspoken connection between the handler and dog made a profound impression on him. 3 months afterward, Reeves submitted his application for the K-9 unit. His supervisor expressed surprise. Reeves had established a strong reputation in cybercrime investigation, not field operations. However, something about the connection between handler and dog resonated with him. "You sure about this, Mike?" his sergeant had inquired. "K-9 work isn't merely a job, it's a lifestyle. That dog goes home with you, lives with you, depends on you." "I'm sure," Reeves replied, with more conviction than he actually possessed. The Homeland Security K-9 Training Center in Texas assigned him to Titan, then a 2-year-old shepherd who had previously failed 2 training attempts, not due to a lack of ability, but because of what instructors described as excessive analytical behavior. Head trainer Martinez explained that most detection dogs alert immediately upon finding a target. Titan, however, pauses, verifies, then alerts. This makes him slower in certification tests, but could potentially lead to greater accuracy in complex environments. The initial weeks of their partnership presented difficulties. Reeves, who was still developing his handler skills, experienced frustration when Titan would hesitate during detection drills, appearing unfocused. A significant moment occurred during a training exercise when Titan bypassed the simulated explosive material and instead signaled an alert to an airport worker's bag, which was not part of the planned scenario. A subsequent security check revealed prescription medications the worker had inadvertently failed to declare. Concerns were raised about medications containing chemical compounds potentially usable in improvised explosives. Martinez acknowledged this, noting it was a thorough observation. Subsequently, Reeves modified his methods, allowing Titan the necessary time for comprehension. Their certification scores subsequently increased significantly, and upon assignment to O'Hare's International Terminal, they rapidly demonstrated their ability to identify anomalies that others overlooked. Their most impactful case occurred 8 months prior, when Titan flagged a diplomatic pouch for inspection, a request technically beyond their jurisdiction. Reeves, trusting his partner, had delayed the diplomatic courier, resulting in an international incident. This was ultimately resolved when a subsequent investigation uncovered counterfeit diplomatic credentials and smuggled biological samples. The case had resulted in commendations for them and a reputation for being willing to follow Titan's nose regardless of politics or pressure. Trust the dog had become Reeves' personal mantra. When in doubt, when under pressure, when facing skepticism from superiors, those 3 words centered him, and Titan had never let him down. Even now, as the investigation into Captain Harrington intensified, Reeves clung to that certainty amidst the growing tension around them. With methodical precision, the specialized TSA technical team worked, carefully cutting through the stitching of Captain Harrington's uniform lapel under the bright examination lights. Captain Harrington sat handcuffed to a chair in the corner, silent since requesting legal representation 15 minutes earlier. "Careful," cautioned senior technician Sophia Lynn as her colleague extracted a paper-thin electronic component from within the fabric. "Don't damage it." A hush fell over the room as Lynn secured the item within a designated evidence container. Roughly the size of a postage stamp but thinner than a credit card, the device displayed visible copper traces and a miniature power source. "Initial assessment?" Coleman inquired. Lynn scrutinized it using a magnifying lens. "It appears to be a custom electronic component, not commercially produced, possibly a triggering mechanism or a remote activation device." Reeves felt his pulse quicken. "For what?" "That's what we need to find out," Lynn said, connecting the container to a specialized scanner. "However, whatever it is, your dog stopped it from boarding that aircraft." FBI Special Agent Victor Ramirez arrived in the room, having been summoned immediately after the device was found. "Captain James Harrington," he stated, consulting a tablet. "Or should I say James Harrington Kaiser?" The pilot reacted quickly, his eyes widening. According to facial recognition data, you resemble an individual who ceased to be under Interpol surveillance in Frankfurt 3 years prior, Ramirez stated. Your associations with specific extremist organizations were noted. Harrington, also known as Kaiser, abruptly moved toward the door. Although restrained with handcuffs to the chair, his forceful attempt resulted in him and the chair being displaced several feet, at which point 2 officers subdued him. Amidst the conflict, he bit down forcefully on something within his mouth.
Suicide pile.
Ramirez exclaimed, "Get medical personnel in here immediately." The following moments were chaotic as medical staff hurried in, prying open the man's jaw and removing a capsule that was partially dissolved. He was swiftly secured to a gurney and transported to the airport's medical center. He will survive, the paramedic reassured them. We retrieved most of it in time, but he will be unconscious for some time. Once the disturbance subsided, Lynn's assessment proceeded with increased intensity. She verified it was undoubtedly a bespoke activation trigger, indicating her screen, intended to connect with an external component, one absent from his possessions. Ramirez addressed Reeves. "We must search the aircraft without delay." American Airlines Flight 862 had been completely occupied by the point the emergency evacuation order was issued. Passengers disembarked onto the snowy tarmac, their faces reflecting confusion and frustration as they were guided back to a secure area of the terminal. A specialized explosive detection team thoroughly swept the Boeing 777 from nose to tail, with a particular focus on the flight deck where Harrington would have been stationed. Titan worked alongside the bomb-sniffing dogs, his approach noticeably altered. He was methodical and precise, carefully examining each section before proceeding. While in the co-pilot seat, Titan issued an alert from beneath the standard cushion. The technical team meticulously removed the cushion, uncovering what initially appeared to be a typical component of the seat's mechanical structure. However, closer inspection revealed otherwise. A second electronic device, significantly larger and more intricate, was hidden within the seat's adjustment mechanism. A bomb technician confirmed the presence of a remote-triggered explosive device following a scan. The device was sophisticated, featuring low metal content, which explains why it bypassed standard pre-flight checks. "How severe?" Reeves inquired softly. The technician's face showed deep concern. If it had landed here, it would have pierced the cockpit floor, potentially harming vital flight systems. A disaster in flight above the Atlantic. Ramirez's phone sounded. Following a short call, he addressed the team. "The pilot is conscious and coherent." Captain James Harrington Kaiser was sitting upright in the hospital bed, his arms restrained to the side supports. His complexion was pale in the bright medical illumination. 2 FBI agents stood watch at the entryway as Ramirez, Coleman, and Reeves entered the room. Titan had been kept outside with another handler, a standard precaution for interrogations. "The device has been located and rendered safe," Ramirez announced directly. "We are aware of the explosive in the cockpit. What remains unknown is whether there are additional devices." Kaiser's eyes darted between them, assessing their reactions. The unsuccessful suicide attempt had left him physically vulnerable, but mentally sharp. "I desire immunity." "You are facing federal terrorism charges for attempting to destroy an aircraft," Ramirez stated flatly. "Immunity is not being offered. Cooperation could potentially prevent a death sentence." A pause settled between them, then Coleman approached. 243 passengers, Captain, including the crew, children, families, people who entrusted you with their lives. Something in her words appeared to affect him. His shoulders visibly relaxed a little. "It wasn't meant to turn out this way," he said at last. "Initially, the operation involved only information-gathering intelligence work." Ramirez positioned a recorder on the bedside table. "Let's begin from the start." The narrative that unfolded proved to be more intricate than anyone expected. Kaiser had, in fact, been a licensed pilot for 15 years prior to being recruited by a well-organized terrorist network during a layover in Istanbul. His first tasks were relatively straightforward. Adhering to security procedures, I documented vulnerability trends and, on occasion, moved encrypted data drives between overseas divisions. "The organization identifies as Ascension," Kaiser informed me. They differ from typical groups. They operate with patience and precision. Certain actions are conceived years beforehand. And this operation? Reeves inquired. It's phase one of a three-part sequence, Kaiser responded. Coordinated attacks targeting 3 transatlantic flights, highlighting security weaknesses despite measures implemented after September 11th. The initial flight served as the first test. Complete operational information revealed that Kaiser had received the custom-made explosives during a stopover in Dubai 3 weeks prior and had installed them during standard maintenance intervals, times when pilots frequently inspect their aircraft. The activation mechanisms integrated into his uniform would have engaged once the plane attained cruising altitude over the Atlantic. The other 2 pilots, are they in place? Ramirez inquired.
Kaiser nodded slowly.
Flights from Frankfurt to New York, Paris to Chicago were scheduled within the next 48 hours. Coleman was already on her phone, coordinating with international authorities. There's more, Kaiser continued, his voice dropping. The Chicago apartment, Unit 512 at Lakeside Towers, served as a network safe house. A team was dispatched immediately to the address. Within an hour, images began flooding into the secure tablets Ramirez carried. The apartment had been transformed into an advanced operations hub, containing blueprints of major airports, 3 protocol documents, and, most concerningly, detailed specifications for the explosive devices. This extended beyond 3 planes, Ramirez observed, as he reviewed the files. They were analyzing the entire international aviation security system. Kaiser affirmed this with a nod. Ascension is pursuing a long-term strategy. The plane attacks served as a demonstration of capability. The actual objective is the worldwide air transportation system, pinpointing vulnerabilities and exploiting them in a methodical way. Ramirez insisted on names. He wanted the names of all individuals involved. Kaiser provided the information he possessed, clarifying that the network functioned in separate units with restricted shared knowledge. His main contact was referred to only as the coordinator, a woman he had encountered on 2 occasions, both times at busy international terminals where observation was difficult. Kaiser cautioned that she would be watching news reports. He stated that when my flight doesn't arrive as scheduled, she's going to realize something is amiss. Contingency plans will then be initiated. I inquired about these plans, and he responded that he didn't know the specifics, but there is a secondary operations center located somewhere near the airport. Reeves considered Titan's remarkable detection capabilities, the device integrated into my uniform. I asked what could have made it detectable to my dog. Kaiser appeared truly puzzled, saying it shouldn't have been. The components had been deliberately engineered to prevent chemical detection. Still, Reeves insisted. He focused on you right away. The ex-pilot denied it. Then your dog is either incredibly fortunate or remarkably skilled, as these devices underwent trials involving K-9 teams in 3 countries. As they departed the hospital room, Ramirez addressed Reeves. We must locate that secondary operations center quickly. I know someone who can help, Reeves replied, looking towards the exit where Titan waited, his posture watchful even though considerable time had elapsed since their morning patrol had evolved into something far more important. Snow fell in heavy flakes as the tactical team gathered in the airport maintenance area, their breath appearing as vapor in the frigid air. Reeves checked Titan's protective vest once more before fastening the specialized booties intended to shield the dog's paws from sharp objects and chemical hazards. The maintenance facility comprises 5 distinct buildings, FBI Tactical Commander Wilson clarified, indicating the blueprint shown on a tablet. Considering Kaiser's restricted intelligence and cell phone triangulation data from his known contacts, we suspect Building C is our most probable target. Ramirez acknowledged. The coordinator, our suspect, probably isn't aware that we've detected the operation, but she will likely become suspicious when Kaiser's flight arrived without any issues, Coleman added. Reeves knelt beside Titan. Ready, boy? He whispered. The shepherd's alert stance provided the response he needed. The approach was silent and coordinated. 3 teams prepared to enter concurrently from separate access points, with Reeves and Titan accompanying the primary entry team. As they approached Building C, an unremarkable building containing electrical systems for runway lighting, Titan's actions validated their assessment. The shepherd's demeanor shifted, his movements becoming more measured, his nose working intensely. "He's detected something," Reeves murmured into his radio. The tactical team then established positions around the primary entrance. With a 3-count signal, they forced the door, moving quickly into the poorly lit interior. The front office seemed ordinary. Maintenance logs, shift schedules, and equipment manuals were neatly arranged on metal shelving units. However, Titan wasn't focused on the office. He pulled Reeves towards a door labeled electrical access only, his sense of urgency clear. Beyond the door, a staircase descended to a sublevel that wasn't included in the airport's official blueprints. The team proceeded cautiously, tactical lights showing the restricted passage. At the lower level, they discovered what seemed like a typical maintenance room, with the exception of the woman positioned near a laptop computer, her hand positioned above the keyboard. "FBI, hands where we can see them," Ramirez announced. Rather than obeying, the woman activated a key and reached for something inside her jacket. The tactical team reacted instantly, 2 officers restraining her while others secured the room. Titan emitted a sharp bark, drawing Reeves towards a storage cabinet situated along the far wall. "Check it," Wilson instructed. Within the cabinet, they found their worst suspicions confirmed: additional specialized explosive devices, numbering at least 20 units, each resembling those found on the aircraft, although with differing mounting configurations. "She's initiating a data wipe," the technical specialist reported, as he examined the computer. "But we caught it in time." The woman, later identified as Elena Vostov, a known associate of several extremist groups, remained silent as she was handcuffed and led away. However, the evidence was compelling. The room held everything necessary for a coordinated attack on multiple aircraft, including devices in various stages of assembly, airline schedules, security rotation patterns, and most disturbingly, personnel files on dozens of potential flight crew recruits like Kaiser. Ramirez understood this extended far beyond just the current flights, reviewing the data. This was a long-term operation, years in the making. As the FBI evidence team documented the scene, Reeves took Titan to each corner of the room, ensuring nothing was overlooked. In the final area, behind a ventilation panel, the Shepherd alerted once more. Inside was a small hard drive carefully hidden. Wilson noted this as they secured the drive, seeing it as one final insurance policy. Emergency vehicles surrounded the maintenance area, their lights illuminating the falling snow with alternating red and blue patterns. A sense of the scale of what they had averted began to settle as word spread through the command center. It began with one pilot, Coleman said, observing as the last of the evidence was loaded for transport. "If your dog hadn't stopped him," Reeves nodded, scratching Titan behind the ears. "One flight becomes 3. A series of 3 successful attacks provided a template for many more." The Shepherd looked up at him, snow gathering on his dark fur, the mission completed. 2 days later, Reeves was in the airport's administrative conference room as Airport Director Margaret Chun spoke to the team. Titan sat attentively beside him, recently groomed and wearing his formal canine and unit harness. According to Chen, her voice filled with gravity, a potentially devastating terrorist plot was stopped thanks to the outstanding efforts of Officer Reeves and his canine partner Titan, in conjunction with TSA, FBI, and airport security. International authorities have verified the successful apprehension of 2 additional pilots in Frankfurt and Paris, averting what would have been coordinated attacks. Ramirez then advanced, acknowledging Reeves with a nod. Findings from the Secondary Operations Center have resulted in the identification of 17 Ascension Network operatives in 8 countries. Apprehensions are in progress. Reeves listened, one hand resting lightly on Titan's head. For the Shepherd, it had been a routine day of performing his duties, utilizing his exceptional senses to safeguard the humans nearby. He hadn't grasped the importance of the pilot he'd stopped, or the lives he'd preserved. He had a sense that something was amiss and wouldn't yield until someone paid attention. "Officer Reeves," Chun stated, "the Department of Homeland Security has asked that you and Titan provide training consultations for their aviation security division. Your approaches, especially your reliance on your partner's intuition, even when standard procedures indicated something different, embody the kind of flexible security thinking that is necessary." Following the meeting's conclusion and the exchange of congratulations, Reeves knelt beside his partner. "Good boy, Titan," he whispered, briefly pressing his forehead against the shepherd's. The best boy. Titan's tail wagged once, his dark eyes meeting Reeves with what almost seemed like understanding. Then his ears perked up, his attention already shifting to the next task, the next patrol, the next threat that only he might detect. They walked back together toward Terminal 3, prepared to resume their observation of the thousands of travelers who would never realize how narrowly they avoided disaster, nor that their safety had been ensured by an officer and a dog who prevented a pilot from boarding his plane. Have you ever seen a working dog like Titan perform duties at an airport or public place? We welcome your stories in the comments below. Do you believe in your pet's intuition regarding people, even if the reasoning isn't clear? Many handlers report that their canine partners often detect things humans overlook. What's the most remarkable animal story you've encountered about an animal averting a disaster or rescuing lives? Please share your experiences. We review all comments and may include your story in a future video. What other canine heroes would you like us to highlight in upcoming videos? Tell us what topics you're most interested in. If the story of Titan's incredible save at O'Hare International Airport impressed you, please share this video with friends and family who appreciate the amazing capabilities of working dogs. Together, we can spread awareness about these four-legged heroes who serve alongside their human partners. Rewatch our previous canine stories displayed now, including the amazing story of Rex, who tracked a kidnapper through a blizzard, and Luna, who discovered a hidden human trafficking operation at a border checkpoint. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes walk on four legs. See you in the next video.